The wife of a Conservative councillor has been jailed for 31 months for what?
This is the end of free speech in Britain. In Russia last year, let's put it into perspective. In Russia last year, do you know how many people were arrested for putting things online that Mr. Putin and his cronies from the KGB didn't like?
Around
400.
Yes.
Do you know how many were arrested and sentenced in this country last year for the same thing? 5,000.
Oh, goodness.
And one of them, for instance, was an army veteran who just a week ago was sentenced and given a £9,000 fine plus costs because he had been caught silently praying, getting in no one's way, but he happened to be praying for a son that he had had aborted, and he'd regretted it ever since. And he'd gone to the nearby abortion clinic just to pray for him. In the street, he wasn't molesting anyone, he wasn't standing in anyone's way, he wasn't talking to anyone. And yet, for praying silently to himself, causing no offence to anyone, magistrates, who are supposed to be sensible,
Yes.
gave him 9,000 fine plus costs because he wouldn't pay a £100 ticket, which the ghastly council worker who came and arrested him tried to give.
And just to remind everyone, Bournemouth Council, who spent £100,000 on that prosecution, has also told the government that it's in financial difficulties. So rather than actually prioritising money they don't have for council services, they're instead wasting it, attacking somebody who's praying silently.
And here's the thing, if you're going to get all moralistic about stuff, then let's look at the other side of the abortion question. Most children who are given abortions in this country do not get their own little injection first, so they do not feel the agony of their own dismemberment, or if they're born alive, being left in a kidney tray to gasp their little last in desperation. That's what happens. We don't even give them an anaesthetic. And that is disgraceful. And if you look at the NHS website on this subject, all they say is, oh, well, it's just a procedure. No, it isn't. It's taking a human life, and it's doing so in circumstances which, at international law, constitute cruel and degrading punishment.
But you know what's worse than that, of course, is it's taking an innocent life that has had no chance to live or anything like that. Whereas if you actually look at some of these cretinous individuals who make everyday decent civilians' lives an absolute untold misery, heaven forfend you should even give them a slap on the wrist. Never mind.
I think this is where you bringing it back to Lucy Connolly, who's this lady that we're talking about. Like, this woman has never been in trouble with the law before. She's the wife of a Conservative councillor. But if you actually look at... So this happened over the Southport riots. There were actually 30 arrests and 17 people went on to be charged for social media posts in relation to the riots. So, you know, she's not the only one, but this 31 months is what she was given. I think that's an astronomical sentence. But I find it absolutely staggering that, you know, just this week that we're going to see the release of over 1,000 prisoners to free up prisons. Yes. Because apparently we've not enough space. And Shabnam Mahmood, who's the Justice Secretary, has said that we need to find a variety of other options rather than jailing. I mean, what are we doing here?
Injustice.
Yeah, exactly.
But Pete, but Pete, there was even one chap who's been in trouble for rioting, who died in prison.
Yes.
And I don't think he'd ever been convicted of a criminal offence previously either.
Not at all. But we're seeing this, and I agree with Lord Monckton, we're seeing an assault on freedom of speech. It is undeniable. But yet this was the plan all along. It's one of the things that has really irritated me about the riots, is it gifted this to the Labour Party. It gifted this to the people that have wanted to clamp down on our freedom of speech for a long time. This has nothing to do with the riots. This is actually the precursor to criticism of migrants and the migration crisis. Because once you start shutting things down a little bit by little bit, then you can start tackling the big ones.
So do you believe the theory, and I do, by the way, that eventually they will make it a hate crime to be anti-immigration?
I think what we'll see next is we'll see immediate blackout zones around Dover, around Calais in particular, so that we can't see the boats and there will be no images of it anymore. I think that will probably be next.
Because they already attempted to arrest Nigel Farage.
Yes, exactly. So we'll start to see that. Now, whether they'll go as far as to say you can't criticise immigration, I don't know, but we'll see it in other different ways, such as this Islamophobia kind of definition. It's still lingering around Westminster. There's lots of rumours that...
Well, isn't it? Hang on, let me get this right. Yeah. Isn't the Islamophobia definition that if I say something that any Muslim believes is Islamophobic, even if it wasn't intended to be, I can be prosecuted.
That's the way around the law works, unfortunately, in this country.
Yeah,
it's
in a roundabout way. What's quite funny is the all-party parliamentary group on Islamophobia have the most bizarre kind of definition. It's even weirder than the ones you've just said. The problem is that we're trying to define something that, you know, a lot of people can't even define within Islam itself. So, you know, the law is going to be a mess. But
I mean, talking about Islam, or indeed any religion, it is inevitable that if you have a religious view, that will be exclusionary of other religious views. Therefore, if you are saying that criticism of any religion should not be allowed, then other religions are going to be have as much trouble as...
That is quite right, because as you will know with the Jews, and I know as a Catholic, what is now happening, I was approached recently, in fact, several times, I haven't answered them yet, but I must, by an organisation in the United States, which is now setting up a pipeline to get out from Britain into the United States Christians who are being persecuted for the ancient faith of these islands.
Yes.
That is what's now happening.
Yes.
There was a horrifying case of a Methodist preacher a couple of years ago who was simply reading from the book of Genesis on a little stool outside Uxbridge Tube Station, and along comes some lefty and says that he was offended by the notion that male and female created he, them, and there were 24 genders, the BBC tells us so. So the police came, they dragged him down off his stool, they threw him to the ground, they injured him, they dragged him to a car, put him in the back of it, took him to the police station, interrogated him for 13 hours straight without a lawyer, and only then let him go. But even then, they said they might charge him later. So I wrote to the then hideous commissioner, the commissar, as I call her, of the Metropolitan Police, Cressida Dick by name and nature, and said this...
Dick of the yard.
Yes, and I said, this is unacceptable, and you will not allow this to happen again on your watch. And if there is any question of this guy being prosecuted, I will have you out of your job. In fact, I got her out of her job within a few weeks anyway.
Well done.
I mean, this kind of bullying by the now far-left establishment that's captured even the formerly moderately sensible police, it's really quite worrying. And that's why these arrests are happening.
Well,
because the police are being encouraged by their command.
Before we go to the next question, right, we're gonna have a bonus round. Right, the bonus round is this. Apart from man or woman, can anyone name any of the other genders that are recognised in Britain today? Come on.
Right,
Come on.
there's genderqueer.
But is that actually classed as a gender?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yes, because you're
genderqueer, bi-gender, that's right.
Bi-gender.
Well done.
Transgender, non-presenting.
What about agender?
Agender, yes.
No, agender.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's the absence of gender.
I was trying to be amusing.
Are any of you demi-boys? I don't know what demi-boy is, but here we
Get
go.
personal with me, Walker.
Someone who identifies as masculine identity, but is not totally binary.
Oh, and there's also, you can be a penguin if you want.
Penguin's not on my list. But anyway,
Look, and I just say
question...
on that very note, sorry, like, on the very point that you just made about where you were saying about how this one person by Uxbridge Tube Station kicked up a stink and said, I find that offensive, and the Sunday this chap was thrown to the ground. On that very note, I find it offensive to anyone who goes on these ridiculous marches in the name of so-called pro-Palestinians and start chanting from the river to the sea. It's a hideous, disgusting, despicable chant. I find it offensive. Now let's see how many people go to arrested.
Absolutely. Now,
I'm guessing
not
none.
a single one. But you're quite right. It is deeply offensive because that would wipe out, as it is intended to do, the entire state of Israel. And let us all be clear, the state of Israel has every right to exist. It has a prior claim over the territory of Palestine. And
Yeah, good luck with persuading them on that one.
OK, but look, we have departed quite far, which is not wholly unusual. But anyway, the question was, just to remind everyone...
Oh, yeah, what was it?
The wife of Conservative council has been jailed for 31 months for doing what?
I believe it was saying something that snowflakes found offensive.
It was sending a tweet, that's quite right. Now, Lord Monckton, following on from the bonus round, According to the SNP this week, how many genders are there?
24.
How do you know that? How do you know?
Because I like to keep abreast of the nonsense.
Yes.
Partly because you can have such fun at their expense. I mean, on the way here, I ran into some communist climate protesters outside the High Court, and I had some time to spare.
Are you okay, though?
So I gave them an education in climate science for 20 minutes. And they were not necessarily wiser at the end of the 20 minutes, but at least they were better informed.
Yes.
And I think the great thing is if we do keep an eye on the absurdities, one of the things that happens when the totalitarians begin to get a grip is that they begin imposing absurdities. It happens everywhere. It happened, for instance, under the Nazis.
Yes.
It's happened under the communists in Russia and in China, and of course in ghastly places like Cambodia and North Korea. The absurdities are what tell you that it is a totalitarian regime, because the absurdities are enforced, and those who align themselves with the regime will stand up and say, you simply aren't allowed to deny that there are 24 genders.
My favourite example of any ludicrous thing like that is Turkmenistan, which was led by Turkmenbashi, which roughly translates to father of the Turkmenian people, right? And unbelievably, in order to get a driving licence in Turkmenistan, you had to learn off by heart Turkmenbashi's book of poetry. It's bizarre thing.
Now, that is actually a very civilised idea. I think we should do that for driving licences here. I think they should learn some of my sonnets by heart.
Well, I like the idea of sort of whether or not you've got a choice of either doing a 3-point turn or reciting "I Wish I Looked After My Teeth" by Pam Ayres.
Right. To bring it back to the question, just to pick up something you said, Lord Monckton, the point is it's not nonsense. After the CAS review and the report, and the independent report into this, we have seen that gender ideology is having a direct consequence on their mental health and the physical health of children. And this shows that the SNP are ignoring that report. They are further inputting gender ideology into the government, into society, and into our structures. This is actually about kind of collecting and about how we collect data within the Scottish government. And there's a big review going on about how they're doing that. So why they've done this already, we're not quite sure. But you know, there's 24 genders. What it doesn't say, when you read into this, there's actually 23 subcategories of transgenderism. But there's a there's a really important one that's being picked up on here, and that's one called autigender, and that is it's people who have autism but don't conform to the binary system of male and female. But what's quite interesting is that if you are autistic, you are 15 to 20% more likely to have autism. And they're saying that there is a big argument being had right now about transgenderism. Sorry, that you know, is there some kind of link between the two?
Yes.
And there's quite a big debate that's going on at the moment. And you know, like whilst many people think this is hilarious, there is a consequence to it, and we have to take it seriously.
For God's sake!
Oh, Lord.
When we first started this show, we had a woke wabbit come on. Which gender are you?
I'm proto-gender.
Which is what?
Which is where you identify as a gender from before gender existed.
Caveman or something.
It's sort of like the Big Bang of genders.
The Big
Exactly,
Bang of genders.
exactly.
Will someone tell the BBC and the SNP there are now 25 genders?
No, actually, it's quite interesting to say that because just last year the BBC released a report that said there were 107 genders. So it just shows that even the people that believe in this stuff and who are pushing this radical ideology aren't all on the same page. It's absolutely absurd.
Do you believe they believe it?
I think they genuinely do. I think at first I was very much of the opinion that they knew that they were being ridiculous. But I think as society has just kind of laughed them off and they got more power and more influence, I think they've now started to believe their own nonsense. And I think they genuinely do believe this. And I think that's what makes them more dangerous. I think that makes them more dangerous.
No, I'm not convinced.
I think
it begins. It's a matter of points. They're just trying to shut us down.
No, I don't agree with that.
That's what I don't like about it.
Can I? But do you reckon there's anybody who genuinely believes that they are let's get this right, a pansexual gender non-conformer? I mean, what does that actually mean? It's like, you know what that is?
None of it means anything,
Well, and
that's the point. If you want to destroy a civilization, and if you're from the far left, that's what it's all about, destroying and killing both ends of life. Destroy, destroy, destroy. Then what you do is you push these absurdities and you insist upon them to the point where, in the end, people cave in and go along with them. Once they do that, you know you've got them where you want them.
Well,
that's what this is about.
I mean,
it's about control.
Do you believe,
by the
sorry,
far
just
left.
to be clear on this, you're an advisor to Margaret Thatcher, so
Yeah.
you've been around the right at the heart of government. Do you think that the outcome here is to beat people in so much that they will accept things that are plainly not true?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. Climate change is a case in point.
Yeah.
It's a complete rubbish from top to bottom, and yet it's absolutely insisted upon. And if you don't defer to it, they will ask, several times there have been hate mail against me saying that I should be executed and people should kill me if they find me.
I mean, I'll tell you what upsets me about all of this.
Yeah.
So you have been criticised and attacked. I mean, this ludicrous situation where they claimed you weren't a real lord, which is just absolute madness. But all of those things, and all you have done is read scientific documents and made your own comments on it.
Well,
You
I've not
didn't
only
say-
that, I've published 24 scientific papers on the climate change question in the leading journals of
Now, for
climate
me-
science.
for me-
That doesn't qualify you over someone who wears an orange T-shirt and throws soup over the Mona Lisa. Come
Well,
on,
those are the
surely.
people I was talking to this afternoon, and I made them very unhappy by giving them a little bit of education in climate science. But they went back in the end to saying, but there's a 97% consensus. I said, well, you might like to read a paper of which I was a co-author published in 2013, which showed that the paper that had claimed there was a 97% consensus had in fact itself marked out of the 11,944 papers they claimed to have read, only, Rabbit, only 65 papers, which is 0.5%.
But actually,
That's
that
actually
Pete,
boils down
not
to very
97.
different, okay?
Sorry, Pete.
1,000 people can tell a lie,
Yeah.
but if one person tells the truth, the one person's still telling the truth, 1,000 people are still telling a lie.
Pete,
But that's where...
Lord Monckton, that's good.
Pete, let me just ask you this question. Isn't it legitimate to be able to debate things properly? And so, look, I have no problem with somebody trying to describe themselves in whatever way, but it's when you start saying you are obliged to agree with this or else.
Yeah, it's also that, and it's also if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person.
Exactly
that,
right.
That kind of as a kind of insidious nature has entered into our politics and into our nature of the debate. But I just want to go back to what Phil said. Well, the thing that really annoys me about this, and where you might be right about people not believing it, is that John Sweeney, who is the head of the SNP now, actually came out originally and said there were only two genders. Yet it is the SNP in Holyrood that is imposing this, despite many people arguing against its critics.
And may I ask you a further question on this, Pete? Because this is the bit that bothers me. So, look, genuinely, if somebody wants to run round in a frock or wear makeup or do any of those things, knock yourself out. Do not get to the end of your life having not lived your life to the full in whatever way you wish to do it. What upsets me is not just putting this onto children, because that is not as bad as what we have seen in Canada, that if parents attempt to prevent their children being indoctrinated, they will be listed as abusive.
Yes, this is a real problem, and we're about to see it as the government's about to reintroduce the kind of conversion therapy banning of it. And there was actually, the government Conservatives were going to pull the transgender aspect of it. However, the Labour Party aren't. So this actually could mean that parents could be criminally charged if they do not respect the new pronouns of their child or do not accept the new gender. This is really terrifying stuff.
How many parents, Pete, do you think are going to consent to have their children's genitals amputated? I think it will be a small number. Now, what does happen with parents, Pete, is this. If you go on any of these trans websites or discussion forums, what they are saying to parents is, if you do not do this to your child will commit suicide. That, once again, is a claim that really has no basis in fact.
Yeah, 100%. Like, if you actually look at most of the data on this stuff, the rate of suicide is actually higher after transition, not before. And I think it's this fool's argument that they have that, once you, transition, then everything is better. It's not true. But we see a lot of this stuff really because of the constant need for validation in our society. You must be validated. This idea that, that you've got to be visible at all times, I think is really dangerous. It's fed into this narrative.
When you get a sudden, absurd societal change like this one, it's being pushed, and usually from outside. I think this is, in a way, a national security risk because innocent children are now in an environment where if they dare to say there are, male and female, created he, them, you and I both agree with the same book on this subject, and so do you, I think. There are two genders, and that's that. That's the way the chromosomes work. If you know any science, you know perfectly well that there are two genders.
And
does
basic
that mean,
science at that. Basic science.
fundamental science. But does that mean that people who are born one gender might want to be another? Well, that's a matter for them, but they mustn't ram it down our throats. However, I am going to ram my pronouns down your throat. By law, my pronouns are your lordship, his lordship.
Yay! By law. There we go. OK, Lord Monckton, we've gone massively into the show and we've only got through a few questions, so we're going to move a bit faster now. But Lord Monckton, how many genders are there according to the SNP?
Well, I said 24.
You did, and you were absolutely correct.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
Pete, Labour councillor Maurice MacLeod has branded King Charles what?
The human representative of genocide.
So
the King and Queen, they're in Australia at the moment, and they've been confronted by an Australian senator called Lydia Thorpe, who is absolutely the definition of a crank. Right. She went on a tirade. I think it was actually embarrassing to watch that. Do you know, she thought she was standing up for her Aborigine community. When the King went to one of these Aboriginal excellence centres and they said, we don't really agree with her. Like, we don't really know who she is. Like, there was one guy, they interviewed one guy and he says, I have no idea who that woman is.
But that is part of it, though, Pete, isn't it? People who are offended on your behalf.
Yeah, they're always offended on behalf of people that they don't really talk to anymore. But
that's right.
If you look at this,
North London is full of people who are offended on behalf of the working class they've never met.
Maurice MacLeod is a fine example of this because he's I think his bio said it was something like he was a regular Guardian columnist and an anti-racist and social commentator. So you know he doesn't get invited to parties.
Yeah.
But it is rather ridiculous, a lot of this stuff. Like, in fact, this woman, if I remember rightly, had a cartoon of the King decapitated on her social media. I think it was on her Instagram page. I mean, these people are just...
Well, I think we'll give her a 2.5-year sentence for that.
Yeah,
why not?
Right.
Yeah.
But isn't that interesting though? That they could post this, but I bet if somebody posted a picture of a beheaded migrant or something, it would be a very different argument.
Without a doubt.
Because it all kind of comes in the context of Australia's rejection of what was known as the People's Voice referendum, which was about what many argued was Aboriginal rights. It was actually about creating a two-tier society, and it was thankfully rejected by Australia. There were some sensible people left in it.
Effectively to give Aborigines additional rights over them?
Yeah, essentially. That was in a broad way, without going too... It's a bit complex, but yeah, that's...
My solution to the Aboriginal question is very simple. It's the same in the United States, the same in Australia, one or two other places. What you do is you buy out their rights, make them citizens of the country, and say, right, now we all get on with it. Let's stop faffing about.
OK, what do you think of King Charles Woke Rabbit?
He seems a bit weak to me. I mean, he could really do more about, like, environmentalism and racism and...
He loves talking to his plants.
Are you joking? He doesn't stop banging on about the environment. I've got a huge amount of respect for His Majesty, but my goodness me, if I have to one more time hear him talking about the natural world and climate change, I might cry.
It's the most important thing
I might turn Republican.
It's the most important thing ever. He spends only about 80% of his time talking about the environment. It should be at least 95.
Yeah. All right. Well,
No, that won't do. 120%.
Yeah. I love the way that somebody said, when he said he used to talk to his plants, and they said the plants.
Water?
Yeah, thank you very much. The plants grow more when he talks to them. Yeah. They've now discovered it's because he was doing it in a greenhouse. And it's the CO2 from his breath. And apparently there is genuine science that because of, I mean, actually, this is the one thing that drives the greenies mad, isn't it? Some increase in CO2 under some circumstances can make more plants grow.
No, it's all plants grow more. It's quite extraordinary. There's been something like a 15 to 30% increase in the total plant biomass on the planet in the last 25 years, entirely thanks to more CO2 in the air.
It's amazing.
Before. Now, your greenies don't know this. I was trying this out on them in the street today. They hadn't a clue about any of this. All they knew was the Communist Party line. Yeah. Oh, there's a consensus. Oh, the planet's at risk. I said, no, it isn't. It's all based on a mistake. These idiot climate scientists forgot at a vital point in their calculations that the sun is shining, and they left it out of their calculations at that
Please,
vital
can
point.
someone explain to me, OK? I know we're not going to try and go off too much on a tangent about climate change.
Well, we're
but
not going to
please-
try and go off on the tangent this whole show.
But please, can someone explain to me why it is that this planet of ours that everyone cries out about, saying is about to die and blow up in our faces, why is it that it survived the Industrial Revolution, it survived when everyone was burning coal fire, when all cars were burning four-star petrol, when we had factories pumping goodness only knows what into the atmosphere, we had London full of smog and everything like that, and yet now when we've got cleaner air than ever before, this is when we're done.
Let's go back. No, very quickly. Let's go back to the pre-Cambrian, 750 million years ago. I remember it well. And at that time, there was 7,000 parts per million CO2 in the air. Today, it's 400. The planet survived then, and I can assure you, all you greenies, it's going to survive now.
Yeah.
All right.
Sit back and enjoy the
stop,
sunshine.
Please, stop.
Sit back and enjoy the sunshine
This
that
question-
climate scientists forgot.
This question was about a Labour councillor. Right, Pete.
Yes.
The question was this.
Yeah, about 25 minutes ago.
Okay. Labour councillor Boris MacLeod has branded King Charles what?
The human representative of genocide.
Is correct. OK, to Phil, Keir Starmer has banned another portrait from Number 10 this week. Who was it?
It's hard to keep up with all of the ones that he's banished from Number 10, but I believe, if my math serves right, it was William Shakespeare.
Hey, OK, we're going to move on because we're getting through these questions. Lord Monckton, 1 in 4 Gen Z job applicants bring what to their job interview?
A warm fuzzy.
Mum and Dad. Can you believe that? In your day, do you reckon you could have gone to your job interview with Margaret Thatcher and took your dad?
No, I don't think she would have been terribly impressed. She would have said, "Who are these people, dear?"
What are these people do? Why did you bring your father?
Yes. What is he doing here? Is he a good man? And I would have said, yes.
Just a matter of interest,
Yeah.
what would she have thought of these young people today who appear to be so snowflakey?
Oh, she'd have taken Norman Tebbett's line, "Get on your bike." Most of them are too weedy to ride a bike. Most of them probably don't know how. But the fact is, there's a kind of wetness about the snowflake generation, which she would have had no patience with at all. She would have said, if you don't go to work and you're young enough and fit enough to work, you don't get paid
Is this a
benefits.
natural, Pete? Is this a natural cycle, though? Because Margaret Thatcher and people like that came about, during that war era where people all pulled together. I think it's perhaps not surprising that people are not as tough when they haven't gone through rationing and fighting a war.
There is an argument here. This is why I've stopped calling them the snowflake generation, and I've actually started to feel sorry for them. And the reality,
I agree with
and
that.
the reality, and no, I think you're wrong, Lord Monckton, because the reality is it's not their fault. It's the parents' fault.
Yes.
The parents have created a society in which any risk must be averted at all costs.
I see these.
So there is no kind of moment of you've got to push forward, a kind of resilience built within
But
a
I've seen,
person.
Pete, I've seen like children, toddlers, where they've got like these special padded helmets in case they fall over.
Yeah, the idea of sending your kids outside to go play in the street now, any
That's not allowed anymore. That could be tantamount to child abuse.
That's not the kid's fault. So insulting the generation that has been inflicted on doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
What you should be doing is asking parents, what are you doing to your kids? We talk about the kids having access to porn. It's because parents have checked out.
Yeah.
Parents realistically now rely on the schools to teach. I remember my mum and dad reading to us as kids and being involved in our education.
When I was a lad, we had to write on slates, and the number of kids used to fall off our roof.
Okay, but no, they were still involved in our education, and this is the point.
But Pete, I just want because I think this is an interesting point. But a percentage of kids who climb trees did fall out and kill themselves.
I used to climb trees up to 40, 50 feet when I was 8. My parents didn't think of having a net at the bottom or having a doctor and a surgeon on hand. It's just nonsense.
Did you ever fall on your head?
Yes, and you see the result every day today.
But hang on a sec. But sorry, the reason why I have to slightly disagree, Pete, is because that's almost as bad, because it's implying that this generation doesn't have a mind of their own. And as far as I'm concerned, there are still plenty of people...
You're all the product of your upbringing.
There are plenty of... Yeah, but I don't do everything my parents told me. Far from it. They, by their own admission, I don't do everything they wanted me to do. For
didn't-
starters,
but-
they wanted me to become a doctor. Hello, sorry. The point...
It's your parents asking, what are the things that you do that they don't like?
I'll tell them later off air. Look, the bottom line is, the way I look at it is exactly the same way. You wouldn't blame the parents of someone who goes around killing somebody. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
you can.
No, why? Excuse me.
Because
if that individual...
Hard upbringing.
Were Tunbridge Wells.
I grew up in a hole. There were 16 of us, 16 siblings. My dad was eaten by a
You
fox
had it all.
when I was a boy.
You were lucky. We didn't have it all. We had envelope.
No, my
suffered.
favourite is to go, at Christmas, we just got a tangerine, the clip round there, but we're happy kids. We're happy kids. Weren't we?
You had a tangerine? By gum, we had an ant. and you had a clip round the ear.
But also,
Well,
We
I
were
dined out at
walloped
the
for a
finest
month.
restaurants.
but you also sit there. You sit there and people go, when I were a lad, you could leave your door open and nobody'd nick anything. Nothing to nick.
The problem is,
there was nothing to
the
nick.
problem is that's the women in this day and age who say, when I were a lad.
Anyway,
Look,
so-
the point, but hang on, I'm being serious. You would still, I'm sorry, but you absolutely would not blame the parents of someone who was the one who picked up a knife or a gun
I'm
and
sorry,
attacked
I'm
someone.
sorry,
I do.
No. Once,
I'm sorry,
Once
if
they're
it's
of age,
Someone, an individual, has
Once they're
committed
of
an act.
age,
Why
it's
would you
up to
blame
them.
the
But
But
parents?
hang on a second, everyone. The point that Pete's making, I'll put it to Lord Monckton, because I think it's a reasonable point. These people have been mollycoddled, and now we're complaining that they're acting like they're brought up mollycoddled.
Yeah, but the thing is, they have been mollycoddled. What I would do is I would still hold a kid once he gets to 18. He's of age, and
then he's not a
been
kid
around.
anymore, is he?
He's been around long enough to know what to do.
I
and then-
don't agree with that at all. At 18, you still know absolutely nothing.
Yeah,
about
but
the world.
So what, someone under the age of 18 doesn't know their
that's
own mind
the law,
then?
and it has been
Well,
for
technically,
ages.
not till the
And-
mid-20s is your frontal lobe.
No,
fully
if-
developed.
if-
So should we move the age of...
No,
there's
if-
arguments moving it up
If you're
rather
18,
down.
you know enough to know what the difference between right and wrong is. And if you're less than 18, then the parents can be held
That's
liable. And
fine,
what
knowing
I
the
would
difference
do,
between right and
what I
wrong,
would
but there's
do,
a different argument there to be
what
had.
I would do is
yeah.
this. I would say if you're under 18 and it's clear to the court that it's defective upbringing by your parents that's led you to be antisocial, then you would pay half the fine and your parents would pay the other half.
Okay, now, Pete, I want to ask you, have you ever taken your mum and dad to a job interview?
I'd barely take my parents anywhere if I can help it.
See, I think
Only for other people's safety.
but I think there's another side to this, right? Because I'm with you, Pete, on this, because I don't think Gen Z, 1 in 4 take their parents. I think their parents take them. They go, right, we will drop you off at the job interview to make sure you get there safely or whatever. And I think actually, I think you've been hard done by Pete with Lord Monckton and Phil Dave, because I think genuinely these kids are not having the apron strings severed.
Exactly, yeah. And, it should be the parents saying, no, I'm not coming with you. Or no, I'm not getting involved in this. You have to do it yourself.
I disagree with that. I'm just saying that an individual is just that. They know their own mind.
Yeah.
They're capable of using
Yeah.
their own mind.
Okay.
And if they use it wrong, then it's
Got
on
it.
them.
Got it. Okay, Lord Monckton. Do you know what? I did actually give you the answer, but in fairness, I do ask the question at the end, so we will do it anyway. 1 in 4 Gen Z job applicants bring what to their interviews?
They bring their mums and their dads and their warm fuzzies.
It's absolutely right.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
Okay, Pete. HMRC has been criticised for wasting £500,000 on what?
Plane tickets and taxi cabs. This is absolutely astronomical. I think it's since the general election. I think we're up to. I think it's. Oh God! The last was about 5 million, 500 million. I think it's incredible amounts of money. They spent 5 million on furniture for a new office that none of them are going to because I think the Office of National Statistics are going on strike because they have been made to go to the office 2 days a week. I know the
but
audacity.
at least it will
of
last longer.
Yeah, that's true. It's absolutely amazing.
A few years ago, the Cameron government banned the Ministry of Defence from phoning the talking clock. They were spending a total of £130,000 a year phoning the speaking clock.
Yeah, but what's quite amazing though is that
Do they not have smartphones?
Yeah,
I'll tell you what they've not got. They've not got to pay the bill themselves. That's
Yeah,
the
but
point.
the point is that, you know, HMRC is run that badly. And,
Yes.
and a local thing that was done by small businesses, a review into them, said that 89% of them said that it was because of the failures of HMRC and the bad services they received as played a negative impact on their kind of operational basis. You know, and we're going to see Rachel Reeves is going to fix that problem, though, because she's just going to shut down all the businesses in the budget. So that at least we won't have that problem. But, I mean, there is a real consequence to it because this is public money.
Yes.
And at a time when the budget is creeping ever closer, this impending doom that we're all going to have to face, the civil service is running around spending money like it's going to go out of fashion.
Do you know, Pete? When I was in local government, I was political advisor to a local council, and we did one thing that was really, really simple. We just said every single manager who manages 3 people or less is no longer going to work for us. And we got rid of all of them. And we sacked vast numbers of people. We cut council tax by 25%, and the approval rating for council services increased. Because I'll tell you what was happening. All of those 3 people were having their jobs impeded by some idiot on 80 grand a year.
It's funny you say that because there is the DEI team, so the Diversity, Inclusion and Equality team. There's 25 of them.
Right.
This total salaries of HMRC is £4 million.
Whoa.
And what's worse, though, is I think it's 13% of them have actually ever done any of the training that they're imposing on the HMRC.
Do you know
So they're
how-
not even
do you
doing
know-
their own homework.
Do you know how we used to stop this when I was at number 10?
Go on.
It was very, very simple. If they started helping themselves in this way and claiming silly expenses and doing frivolous things like diversity and inclusion, all that sort of stupidity, then we'd simply say, right, we're not going to fund you. See, the great thing that politicians have, and Margaret Thatcher understood this well, the one power they still have, because they've given so much of it away to the UN and all sorts of places, the one power they still have is the power of the purse.
money.
You just cut off, it's called the power of the purse. It's a constitutional power. And if you just you just murmur very quietly to them, I think we'll defund that if we carry on.
Sadly, though,
Any further down this line, it's amazing how quickly they back
They
up.
get this. They get this.
And in no time, the message went round Whitehall, don't try anything silly like that, because Monckton won't like it. You just need one or two people in the system who have access to the Prime Minister and who can kick ass where it's necessary by saying, you're not going to get the money anymore. And
sadly,
that's
though,
what
we have a government that is very willing to give the public.
Oh, that's out.
Because let's not forget, as soon as the Labour government came into power, the civil service got a 5% uplift in its in their salaries, and you know the pay of these inflation-busting ones, their trade union friends, is absolutely astronomical.
Pete, what has the HMRC spent £500,000 on?
Plane tickets and taxis.
Unbelievable, but correct. OK, Phil, a mayor in Germany has banned what from all schools?
Oh, hang on, I did read this. I think...
Education.
That's taken as read.
It's a
Men
plant.
and women.
No, it's a plant, isn't it? Are they...
Cannabis.
No, is it cactus they've banned?
It is a cactus plant, yeah.
I'm just out of the corner of my memory. Remember reading that? How absolutely ridiculous! Why? I don't even know why. What in the case?
Yeah, go on, Pete.
Is it in case they feel a prick?
No. So basically, there was I think it was a kid or something that was really badly prickled or whatever you call it. And there's kind of this gross overreaction by the mayor, and he's banned them from this entire town. Now, I didn't know that they grew there, and I presume it was in a school or something. But again, I think this goes back to the point we were making about the parents coming to the interviews and things. Is the risk is being removed from our society by those in power, and I think this is a prime example of an overreaction to what is just an oddity.
Maybe they could wrap the cactus or cacti in cotton wool.
Yeah. Good idea.
Right, what they're going to do, the woke rabbit is now going to tell us all the things that you believe should be banned in schools.
Racism.
Yeah.
Well, we can all agree with that.
PE.
Why PE?
PE?
Yeah, you
We've
can't...
got enough of an obesity crisis. You don't ban PE.
It promotes toxic masculinity. Boards of colour. You've got to ban
boards
those.
of colour.
Boards of colour, yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that they seem to be getting rid of in schools, which I think is a very bad idea. Strict school uniform policy.
I think that's...
Because what happens is
terrible.
Poor kids suddenly now are picked out. I had a friend of mine
100%.
whose who is the illegitimate nephew of an earl. And he said when he went to school, he was glad of the school uniform because he didn't have any non-school uniform clothes because his dad paid for his education, but nothing else. And he said, but the other boys didn't notice because...
Yeah, there's definitely that aspect of it, but the other one is also, it's a safety thing. You know, you notice a kid in a school uniform, you see the colour of the blazer
I
or
suppose that's
and
right.
the school tie or something, and, you know, if they're in a place that, you know, they're not supposed to be or, you know, at a time you wouldn't expect them, you notice that more. There is the safety element
It's
to a school uniform.
safety. It is uniformity, like by its definition. It's camaraderie.
Yeah.
It is absolutely... It's equality, for crying out loud. In a day and age when we bang on more than ever before about equality,
But
it's equality.
If they try to ban a uniform, then what you do is you get together your mates and if you really want to piss off the teachers, what you do is you all get biker jackets. You can get them second-hand, quite cheap. They look wonderful. And I've still got mine from when I was a lad. And there was it was always a good way to wind the adults up in school if you turned up in a biker jacket.
I've got to say, my favourite ever breach of school uniform policy was... There was a school in Scotland where they wanted to wear shorts, the primary school boys, because they wanted to play football at playtime. And they discovered that they weren't allowed to wear shorts, but because of all this gender issue, they were allowed to wear skirts.
Yes.
So they all turned up in
I remember that.
skirts instead.
Or as we call them in Scotland, kilts.
Kilts. I mean,
I suspect the latter.
I will say one thing. I think there are a few countries on earth where they should allow little boys to wear skirts, but I think Scotland, because they're kilt, should be allowed to do it. But anyway, Phil, you're saying it's a cactus that the mayor has banned?
I believe
You're
it's a cactus.
Absolutely correct. Lord Monckton, ITV is spending 95 grand a year on AI to create what?
Oh, crikey, I missed this one. What would they be creating? They were creating a woke cartoon character.
No, I'll tell you what, Pete, they're not very creative, is the clue.
Yeah, so from what I understand, I was talking with Alex Phillips here on Talk, and it's about creating TV programmes. So what they're doing is they're feeding into this kind of system, or whatever you call it, the artificial intelligence, like certain kind of buzzwords, their original ideas, and it's formulating new ones. And I was just, some of them don't seem that bad, but others, I don't know. I'm not convinced by this. And also, 95 grand just to... do the job of something else.
Can we not come up with some show ideas right now? Come on, what can we do?
Where we got this one from is a rather mystery.
Tea brewing with Stephen Mulhern.
What about you are the wokest link?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's good.
No, what we need to do is we need to get right to the nub of things. I know. A History of Pizza with Bobby Davro. That would be a great show. Going through the cultural context of bread and cheese throughout the ages. That would be really interesting. Anyway, what have they spent 95 grand on, Lord Monckton?
So...
AI for news.
On AI for making programmes. I mean, my goodness, what
But Monckton, we're not going to give you the point for that because I don't think you knew the answer.
Oh.
But OK.
I hadn't a clue.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. That was The Woke That Was with Andre Walker.
OK, on to Pete. An airport in New Zealand has introduced maximum hugging time in its drop-off zone. How long is it?
Well, I actually know this. It's 3 minutes, apparently. 3 minutes is a long time to give someone a hug. Can we just agree?
you're
One
gonna
Mickey
put this
Mouse,
up.
2 Mickey Mouse, 3 Mickey Mouse, 4... Yeah, it does. It is quite a long
It's a
time.
long time. I don't know what people are complaining about. Honestly, I can't bear 3 seconds.
Unless it was a
Neither
spec.
can I.
The woke rabbit is hugging Pete now.
Yeah.
Unless it's a special hug.
No,
Well, I mean,
when
that's
I'm saying
looking
goodbye
pretty
to my
special.
lovely wife, I like 5 or 10 minutes. I don't want to have 3 minutes.
Well, it might
Well,
make
what do you do in 5 or 10 minutes?
Well, I can tell you all
but-
sorts of things. You can do a great deal in 5 or 10 minutes.
Apparently, according to some
Hello,
of the
Web
research, his 20 seconds is apparently long enough to release oxytocin. So that's all you need.
Has your oxytocin...
I have to say, Pete, there is nothing more romantic than Pete Barnes going, you only need 20 seconds for oxytocin to be released. Viscountess Monckton needs more than 20 seconds for her oxytocin. or whatever.
The funniest thing is, though, is the signs that they put up about this saying farewell is difficult, so make it quick. I was that's quite funny, I won't lie. But what are they going to do? They're going to stand there with a stopwatch for 3 minutes.
I mean, I think it's
Well,
really
to be fair, they did say
think-
they're not going to police it as such.
Oh,
They
right,
just,
okay.
no, hang on, I don't
But I
think this is
think, but hang
necessary.
on a second. In the 1950s, when you see, brief encounter and all this sort of thing, and people would be waving at the train going away. What are you doing to me? Ah, the woke rabbit's attacking me. Ah, help, help, help. Okay, but we see people waving goodbye. What happens when you go to an airport now, or a train, or get into a car? You say goodbye to your family, and then open up WhatsApp and go, "Great to see you this weekend." Like, so you've only missed them for maybe 4 or 5 seconds.
And you're already in touch again.
Already in touch
Yeah, I
again.
suppose
Yeah.
this is a traffic thing, I bet, to keep people
It is.
moving and all that kind of stuff, which, you can
Oh,
kind of
I
understand.
discovered
It's
something.
to make more money at the drop.
I discovered something.
Yes, that's what it is, isn't it? Because if it's any longer than 3 minutes, then you have to go park.
I discovered something the other day. The thieving bastards, right?
Good Lord.
Heathrow Airport, you have to pay £5 to drop off, right? Have you attempted to just go to one of the nearby hotels and walk up to it?
That's what I
It
did.
can't be done.
No.
It's virtually impossible.
So the way around that, because this is actually a life lesson, people, okay? So hold that thought, okay? You're absolutely right. They do make it almost impossible. If you actually go to their long stay car park, this is true, long stay car park, you get 30 minutes free, and there is a shuttle bus that takes you from the long stay car park for free, shuttle bus from the car park to the terminal. And that is...
So hang on a second.
it's ridiculous.
So-
There is a way of
There's
doing it
another
free.
way, which I used to use when I used to fly regularly from Cyprus to Britain to look after clients and so on. And I kept a motorbike free undercover at Heathrow. So that I could fly in, I could get on the bike, and in those days I could get to my club in St James's Street
good
in
work.
16 minutes from Heathrow Airport.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. So basically, just some crazy lord on his back going, baby, I was born to run. So you can leave your motorbike free at Heathrow Airport.
Well, you certainly could in those days. It was some years ago now, because I can't see well enough to ride a bike now, but I loved it when I could. And you could literally park it undercover in one of the car parks. They had a special zone for motorbikes.
So-
and I kept one permanently there, so wherever I went in the world, I could come back. I would always travel in leathers because it's the best way to keep yourself clean and warm in the plane. And then I would just
I have to say,
straight on the bike and in.
I have to say, Lord Monckton, the thought of you sat in leather gear on a plane is just it. I mean, that was it.
Well, all the stewardesses kind of liked it, so I,
So that's
And
what
what-
we said to you,
but-
anyway.
The men or the women?
And what is it that we say to all the stewardesses? What was it that first attracted you to the millionaire Lord Monckton? Anyway.
I don't want to go down a very dark. I don't want to get
yeah.
down a very dark path here, but didn't it make going to the facilities quite difficult? They're already quite difficult to navigate, as it? Because
Yeah.
how tiny they are. But then I can't help but think that
there's a
they're
wonderful-
clad in leather.
there's a wonderful Japanese invention called the zip. You should try it sometime.
No, here we go. I'm surprised you're not still using the button fly. You're old school like that. Okay. Pete, how long
It's 3 minutes.
are you allowed to say goodbye for?
The 3 minutes.
Is absolutely correct. Okay. Phil, final question. This is to decide who wins.
No pressure.
Okay. The Northern Ireland Civil Service has banned which word because it's offensive? Is it working from the office?
Yeah.
Oh!
Personal responsibility.
Yeah. What do you call it? Leaving after 5 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you're describing everything to me that I reckon that most millennials will hate. So I'm just going to say millennial.
Ooh, that is impressive.
Good one.
That's impressive. Anyway, look.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, it is correct.
Is it really?
Yeah,
It is
it is,
correct.
yeah.
But Lord Monckton, are you I just worry about this political correctness. I mean, of all the problems that Northern Ireland has, of all the things that might be said that's offensive in Northern Ireland, millennials doesn't sound high on the list.
Well, this is how silly it's all got.
Yes.
I think that what we should really do is ban all forms of socialism and communism
Yes.
and make them permanently illegal on
Yeah.
pain of, let me see, they're giving, how many months did they give this
31.
poor lady?
31.
Right, so if you use the word socialist or communist in a context that makes it clear that you are socialist or communist, 31 months in jail for each offence.
Oh,
Hang on a second.
Can they ban woke rabbit?
No, what we should. No, I'll tell you what we should do. We should set your tax level at the level you personally advocate for. So what happens is, so all of these lefties at university can all have 100% tax, whereas I'd probably give about 3 or 4% for national defence.
Uni students don't have any income. How would they pay tax?
Well, I genuinely did not believe that Phil Dave would get Northern Ireland Civil Services band millennials. So I think we got to give him the prize for winning the quiz. Also got to say thank you to Lord Monckton and thank you so much to Pete Barnes. Pete, there were moments there when you're getting a bit frustrated about not being able to contribute.
Just a little, yes, just a little.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit the woke rabbit and bid you goodbye.